Athletic Director Knowlton. You come from obviously a military background, being an Army and obviously an Air Force. Berkeley is not a place that is used to taking orders from faculty to students to alumni to the general community at large. How are you going to make that transition to a place that is not used to the chain of command?
That's a great question, and when I talked to the coaches a little bit earlier, I asked them what they thought of marching at lunch, and it wasn't received very well. I think what you're going to find is I'm a very collaborative leader, and I think that when you're at RPI, when you're at many of the organizations I've been, being a collaborative leader, a servant leader, is what people respond to, people want, and it helps build great teams. And so I think that's what you'll find as you get to know me and talk to others that know me, that truly is my leadership style.
Chancellor Chris' opening, she said that you loved problems, loved challenges. What specifically about Cal's challenges and problems right now excites you about this opportunity?
Well, as you can imagine, and just what's your affiliation, I'm sorry?
The San Francisco Chronicle.
And it's Rusty?
Yes.
Okay. Rusty, I have read everything I can about Cal, and there's been lots of studies and reviews, and there is not one thing that I've seen that with a great group of people like are here can't be solved. So I have not seen a problem that's not solvable, and I'd love to be part of that journey.
David Bush, Bear Insider. Have you ever had a challenge, though, quite like this, with the two things, obviously, are the finances and the Title IX compliance? Have you ever had to deal with anything quite that complex? And, how do you have a plan? Or yet?
The answer is yes and no. I don't have a plan yet, but that's what I think is going to be key to working with the Chancellor and working with my teammates across the campus and in athletics. Have I done this? Yes. Much like a state institution, we've had 2.5 government shutdowns in the last 3 months alone. One weekend we couldn't have any of our teams play as we tried to figure out other ways to finance games. When I was at RPI, we had some of the exact same problems, and so none of those are exactly the same, but they all require rolling up your sleeves, looking at both sides of the balance sheet, and taking care of people as you do it. And so I feel very confident that with the right people in the room, this problem, these challenges are very solvable.
Could you detail some of those problems that you had at RPI in terms of finances, maybe coming up short?
So one of the challenges at RPI is we borrowed a lot of money at the institute level to pay for some phenomenal facilities. And then the market went south, and all of a sudden now we had to look at some challenges with layoffs and some challenges with other things. And again, I think when you approach each of these with compassion, you approach them with looking at both sides of the balance sheet, you can come to solutions that, from the big picture work and also work as you get down and drill into the details. So not easy, and I'm not going to pretend that those times were easy times, but they're very similar to some of the challenges at Berkeley.
Trace Travers from Rifles.com. You ran a 27 sport program in Air Force, and now you have, I believe, 30 sports here. How do you kind of interact with the coaches on a close enough level to know that they can kind of trust you and build that relationship?
It's a great question, and I probably can start off by saying I have 5 sons, and if you ask any one of them, the others are my favorite, but they always seem to have enough to accomplish the mission, to be successful. And so my job with 30 coaches is the same thing, is to communicate and talk. We've already talked in our meeting this morning about what I call listening days, which are really an enhanced SWOT analysis for athletics that I'll send out sometime this week or next week, and with Mike's permission, give them an opportunity to put together strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and really some other areas of athletics that I would like to have some insight in before I arrive. And so, yeah, I mean, it's really staying connected, communicating by all means, and being there when challenges arise. I think at the Air Force Academy, we had 29 sports, but I also had all of the PE instructors, which are 65 or 70 instructors, and who taught 10 classes to 4,000 cadets over the 4-year experience. And we ran the intramurals, and so the same thing. You never have enough time for everybody, but you really have to prioritize every day of what practices, what games, what coaches, what administrators, who do I need to get out and have some quality time with today. And so that's part of the life of an AD, to make sure that you bring the organization together.
In a lot of the stuff that I read, you're credited with a big part of helping attendance grow at Air Force, for football especially. I'm wondering what you got from that, and maybe you could bring to Berkeley to help attendance not only in football, but across the board in some of the other sports.
It's a great question. I think the biggest thing I learned, it's a lot easier to lose fans than to get them back. And I think it's really getting out in the community. And, you know, my job is I talk to Rotary clubs, I talk to Kiwanis clubs, I talk to anybody who would invite me to talk. And I think it's telling the story of where we're going, what the vision is for athletics, why athletics is such a critical part of the bigger Berkeley, and then being very, again, we have to do a great job marketing. We've got to have a great benefits, and the fan experience has to be exceptional. And, you know, at the Air Force, we put in new scoreboards, and we put in new sound systems, and, you know, now we're putting in a new locker room, and so it was both for the student athlete and the fans and the fan experience. And so, yeah, it's hard. There's no doubt it's hard. And if you look at the national landscape, we're all struggling with this. So it really takes a lot of elbow grease and really pounding the pavement to get out and reconnect with the community and fans and alums.
How much did you have to deal with surrounding communities at Air Force? I know there's a lot of real estate around the Air Force Academy, as opposed to here, where you have neighbors that are literally right next door and determine what you can do with the stadium.
So if I understand that correctly, what did I do with the surrounding communities?
Or how did you interface with the surrounding communities, and how would you bring that approach here?
Just the same way. And I think, you know, one of the big things is just transparency. Being willing to go out there and talking to different groups. I imagine that not every group is going to receive the AD with open arms and hugs, and that's okay. But if I don't go out and talk and communicate and be transparent, it's very hard to have a relationship. And so I think that's worked very well, just staying connected, getting connected, and communicating both the good and the challenges.
Josh, you in the Daily Californian. Going off of Rusty's question a bit about attendance, how do you encourage students and alumni alike to get excited about not just our major sporting events like football and basketball, but some of our other programs that have also been very successful, like rugby?
It's a great question, and at Air Force, one of the best things is Chick-fil-A. So by serving Chick-fil-A at games to students, that really works well. But I think it's talking to the students too, and getting groups of students and asking them what are the obstacles to attendance. I mean, obviously there's so many things to do on this wonderful campus. It's how do we find ways to make it exciting to join us at an event. And you know, I don't have those answers, but I'm going to be coming to you and talking to students and finding out what it is. And if it's Chick-fil-A, I'll be excited because I've mastered the Chick-fil-A option. But really, it's, you know, what are the things that we can do so that we can support the student athletes and the programs that represent Cal so well across the nation.
You have a
Good
follow-up?
question. Thanks, Josh. I'll be back to talk to you.
One of Chancellor Chris' mandates is to get to prong 1 of Title IX by 2021. I know you've got a ton of experience, but is there anything specifically that informs you on that subject, and maybe how you guys will accomplish that?
You know, it's a great question, and I think prong 1 is what the founders of Title IX really envisioned back in, I think it was 1972. You know, this is, you know, and prong 1 is proportionality. So if you have 52% of your campus is women, then 52% of your opportunities should be the same. And so I absolutely admire her for making that commitment to prong 1, and then really you have to get in and you have to look at how do you get to prom one? And there's lots of ways to do it. And, you know, there's some roster changes you can make, there's adding sports, there's all sorts of things. And I think what I really heard from Chancellor Chris was cutting sports is a last resort. And as an AD, that is absolutely a last resort. I mean, my job is I am going to go out and find other ways to support and meet the requirements of prom one. And that's what Chancellor Chris has challenged me to do, and you know, I accept that challenge. I'm here because I believe in that challenge, and I think it's certainly the right thing to do for Cal.
Jim, you were a student athlete, the captain of your hockey team. Can you just share with us the experiences that being a student athlete and the captain of your team have grounded you and that you bring with you into this position?
You know, it's a great question. Am I still on? Can you hear me? I've had a lot of opportunities to be part of organizations, and being a team captain was probably one of the hardest leadership opportunities, you know, of my career. And you're leading your peers, you're leading your friends, and at the end of the day, you want to have a successful team. And so, yeah, I learned collaboration, I learned leadership, I learned compromise, I learned you know, sacrificing for the good of the team. I mean, it really is the beginning of servant leadership for me, as you really have to be willing to put your own needs aside for the betterment of the team. And I think all of those lessons you learn in all the things that we do, but I think, you know, in athletics, and in particular when you're a team captain, that's important. I started a program at the Air Force Academy where we specifically do team captain training, and I take all 50-plus team captains to Gettysburg. And with the backdrop of Gettysburg, it's not a history lesson, but it's really small unit leadership. And we talk about how are you going to get the best out of your team, because literally they handed me a C, ironed it on my uniform, and said you're team captain. And if you hadn't seen great team captains in your life up to that, it was discovery learning. And so yeah, we're a little bit more deliberate, and I think our team's success many times revolves around that student leadership. I know we have great coaches, but student leadership on teams is so critical to the success of teams. Great question, Coach. I was getting nervous.
In the recent past, the Pac-12 has made scheduling decisions that have wrangled a lot of coaches and athletic directors. What's your philosophy in terms of being able to address that with the Pac-12, with the commissioner, and having teams not play a short week after an away week, for instance, in football?
It's a great question, and I would be probably foolish to really engage too deeply in that. I think all of us athletic directors, given our choice, would have noon games on Saturday, and that would be nirvana, and that's not the case. And I think I'm going to have to get to know Larry, Commissioner. I'm going to have to spend some time talking to the other ADs and really dig in to see what it is that we can control, what we can't control, and where the AD at Cal can have influence. And certainly I'm going to get some history lessons from Mike, if he's willing to share, and really see where we are now and what we can do. Because again, fan experience is a big part of what you just described, but also visibility nationally is also key for us. I mean, getting the brand out there is an important part of athletics as the front porch. And so, yeah, I think I'd be better served by getting to know the landscape a little bit better. Thanks.
Do you mind giving us a little bit of a timeline on how all this came about maybe when you were contacted and when you thought, hey, this might be a place for me, and when it all started to come together to this point?
That's a great question. I guess it's probably not classified anymore. Dan,
You're good.
I'm free to talk. I want to check with my boss first. The search firm contacted me multiple times, and you know, I had gotten to know Mike when we played, and so I you know, obviously everyone in the country holds Cal in high regard, and so after a few phone calls, I did a lot of reading. I wanted to know what the opportunities and challenges were here. The more I read, the more exciting it became, and somewhere a couple weeks later, I got a call and said that I had been invited out to meet with the search committee. And for me, when you're in a great job, you go to those and you really are going to want to ask as many questions as you get asked. And my first question after I'd gone through an hour, and I'm not going to call it grilling, but it was very, very great questions, was I asked the search committee if you hire this guy Knowlton and you all get together a year from now and you're saying, you're high-fiving each other and saying, boy, what a great hire this person was, what would I have done in a year that would sort of reinforce that you made a good decision? And I have those all typed up. I keep them, and it was amazing, the diversity of thought, but also the depth of how important athletics is to the community. And so that got me even more excited just to hear from all corners of the campus the things that we could do to continue to get better. And I've already said we're doing great things, and how do we continue to raise the bar? And then I came back, as a finalist and got to interview really 8 different folks. And well, they interviewed me, but I also got to ask questions. And at every step of the way, I just got more and more excited. Did I think I was going to get the job? I think you never know. I mean, it's about having some of the qualifications, but it's also about fit. Do you fit with the chancellor? Do you fit with the cabinet? Do you fit with the philosophies and the goals and the integrity and the character and the things that I'm sure Cal holds in high regard. And so I was thrilled when the chancellor called me and made the offer. And my wife will tell you that my feet haven't touched the ground since. So I'm not wearing out any sneakers right now. So that's a good thing.
That's what I was going to ask about next. You mentioned your family. What has the reaction been from family, from friends, especially today as some of the news is in?
Well, it's interesting because my phone has blown up and I haven't had time because I've been going non-stop to look at it. But at last count, there were a very lot of texts and emails. And I think the nice thing about the Knowlton family is they're very supportive, and we're supportive of each other. And I'm lucky because I can call one of my sons and get updated on all 5. So they stay very connected, and so that's really helpful for Corey and I because we know what's going on. They share with us, and so they've all been really supportive. And my son, who's a freshman at the Air Force Academy right now, they've already started asking for interview opportunities, and I said, let's hold off on that. I don't. He's a freshman, so I want him to survive freshman year before we put him in the limelight. So, but no, it's been so positive, and everyone's been so excited.
As you were going through your career younger, who were some of your mentors, some of the athletic administrators that you look up to that inspired you, that you kind of patterned yourself after? Can you name some?
It's interesting because for the first part of my life, those mentors typically were in the Army, and I had some phenomenal mentors. I was in Berlin when the wall fell and worked for a gentleman named General Ray Haddock, who was just one of those leaders who, when you talk about servant leadership, he was it. And he taught me some life lessons that were phenomenal. And then, it's a little bit different when you get into athletics as an AD. I hadn't worked for a lot of other ADs along the way. But guys like Bubba Cunningham, I admired just absolutely greatly. And Gene Smith, we hosted the NACDA Spring Symposium last year and had 100 ADs that came, and we taught about character development, leadership development, and sexual assault prevention. And Gene and Bubba and many others, they get it. I mean, they really understand it, and it's just an honor to get a chance to be in a room with them and talk to them and rub elbows with them. And Dan Guerrero, who has done just phenomenal things at UCLA. Anytime I can get close to him and pick his brain, I love it. He probably wants to give me the Heisman every once in a while, but just getting a chance to talk to some of the superstars in our field really makes it special. It makes them special because they're willing to share. So those are some of the key ones.
So before we completely wrap up, it wouldn't be a press conference without a good photo op. Jim, if you want to come over to the other side, Chancellor's got something for you. Here, come over to your side.
So we have your new team shirt, number 18.
Do I have to put it on? No. I will. I don't mind doing it at all.